Week 6 Arts 10 Quarter 1. Abstract Expressionism, Op Art, Conceptual Art or Pop Art. Contemporary Art Forms. World events in the mid-20th century immensely influenced the course of human life and, with it, the course of art history. World War I, 1913 to 1914 and World War II, 1941 to 1945, shifted the political, economic, and cultural world stage away from Europe and on the New World continent, America. The New York School is an institution in New York City. Young American painters, sculptors, and authors sailed to Europe in the 1920s and 1930s to broaden their horizons. During World War II, however, a reverse migration drew European scientists, architects, and artists to American shores. For newly arrived artists and their American equivalents, New York became a refuge. As a result, what became known as the New York School was established, as opposed to the School of Paris, which had been immensely influential in Europe. The movement's bold young painters were able to create their own combination of Europe's Cubist and Surrealist aesthetics. The term, abstract expressionism, was coined to describe their style. Painting in action, Pollock splattered, squirted, and dribbled paint on large canvases placed on the floor, with apparently no pre-planned pattern or design in mind. The overall impact is one of vibrancy, creativity, and visual energy. For the first time, Pollock's one-man display in New York in 1943 drew worldwide attention to abstract expressionism. Jackson Pollock's radical approach to painting revolutionized the potential for all contemporary art then followed him. Jackson Pollock's work exemplified one type of abstract expressionism. These were made using a technique known as motion painting. Color field painting, in contrast to the vigorous gestures of the action painters, another group of artists who came to be known as color field painters, used different color saturations. Some of their works were huge fields of vibrant color, as in the paintings of Mark Rothko and Barnett Newman. Others took the more intimate, pictograph, approach, filling the canvas with repeating picture fragments or symbols, as in the works of Adolf Gottlieb and Lee Krasner. Optical art, or op art, is a form of visual art that employs optical illusions. Op art is abstract, including several well-known works in black and white. They usually create the sense of movement, hidden images, flashing and vibrating patterns, or swelling or warping to the spectator. As the eye moved over different segments of the image, perfectly stable components appeared to shift back and forth, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, as the brain responded to the optical data. Viewers experienced sensations varying from discomfort to disorientation and giddiness. Victor Vasarely was a French-Hungarian artist credited as the grandfather and leader of the op art movement. The idea or concept behind the piece is more important than the finished art object in conceptual art. It began as an art trend in the 1960s, and the term is most used to describe art created between the mid-1960 and the mid-1970. Conceptual art, often known as conceptualism, is art in which the work's thoughts or ideas take precedence above aesthetic, technical, or material considerations. Some installations, or pieces of conceptual art, can be built by anyone by just following given instructions. 1 and 3 Chairs, Joseph Cossett, 1965. An actual chair. Center. With a photograph of the same chair and an enlarged copy of a dictionary definition of a chair. Pop art is an art movement that emerged in the United Kingdom and the United States during the mid to late 1950s. Pop art often takes imagery that is currently in use in advertising. Product labeling and logos figure prominently in the imagery chosen by pop artists. The movement presented a challenge to traditions of fine art by including imagery from popular and mass culture, such as advertising, comic books, and mundane mass-produced cultural objects. Contemporary art forms. Contemporary art is the art of today, produced in the second half of the 20th century. Throughout history, people have used art to communicate without relying on words. Art can express political ideas, reinforce religion, or convey deeply personal thoughts. Art communicates in different ways, including through symbols or allegory, in which a figure stands for an abstract idea. Contemporary artists work in a globally influenced, culturally diversity, and technologically advancing world. Their art is a dynamic combination of materials, methods, concepts, and subjects that continue the challenging of boundaries that was already well underway in the 20th century. Installation art is a type of modern art that involves the use of sculptural materials and other media to alter the way a viewer perceives a space. Installation art is not always limited to gallery settings and can be as huge as life-size or even greater. It can be built or placed in both public and private settings, both indoors and out. His practice was regarded highly innovative during the transformative decades of the 1960s and 1970s. In the final years of his life, Bruders created immersive decors, large-scale displays in which examples of his past works were often unified with objects borrowed for the occasion. In May 2016, MoMA organized the first comprehensive New York retrospective of Marcel Bruders, 40 years after the artist's death. Filipino artist who used installation art style, Leroy New. For Christmas 2015, New used the SM Aura Sky Park lawn as his artistic venue through an interactive sculpture installation called Astriapora. Who would have thought that the colorful structure was made up of tacky plastic household items sourced from Divisoria? He also joined efforts to rehabilitate and restore pride in Manila's main waterway, the Pasig River, through the Bikawan Floating Island project. Together with urban designer Julia Nebrija, he made a floating installation where people could enter and appreciate the long-forgotten river.